You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, world, and welcome to Tales from Hollywoodland, a veritable feast of movies, television, Broadway, showbiz stories, and even a little bit of news and gossip with Julian Schlossberg, Arthur E. Friedman, and Stephen J. Rubin. Today, we're looking at women directors and producers. And now, here's Steve.
Hey everybody, great to see everybody and hear everybody. We have a great show. We're going to talk about people of the other sex who have been titans in our business. And I think we're going to start going back a little bit in history to go to our friend Julian, who will start the ball rolling.
Well, I really was always interested in Ida Lupino because she was one of the few women directors of the 50s and 60s who did an enormous amount of work. A lot of people, because of her hard-boiled characters that she played as an actress, felt she was an American, but she was not. She was born in Britain, Great Britain, and she came from a very big theatrical family. Her father was a very famous musical entertainer, her mother an actress, her grandfather, her uncle, they were all in the business. And she loved the idea of writing, even as a young girl. But her father pushed her to go to RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. And there she actually met George Bernard Shaw, who cast her from RADA into that wonderful play that he wrote called Heartbreak House. So she started out as an actress, a young girl, did 5 or 6 movies and for Warner Brothers. She had her hair blonde, and she was known in England as the British Jean Harlow. So right off the bat, she was discovered by studios in Hollywood, and Paramount brought her over. And she ended up having a 5-year contract with Paramount. And in the second or third year, she contracted polio and obviously couldn't work and was out for a while and was dropped by Paramount. But Warner Brothers wanted her. And it was at Warner Brothers that most of us who love film, discovered her, certainly. And that's when movies with Raoul Walsh and Humphrey Bogart, like They Drive by Night and High Sierra, where she was the female lead or co-lead, because Ann Sheridan was in They Drive by Night as well. So she developed this kind of hard-boiled, tough gal, but she actually, once again, like Bette Davis and Olivia de Havilland, who were under contract to Warner Brothers, she also went on suspension because she refused to do some of the roles that Warner Brothers wanted her to do. Most of us know about Bette Davis and Olivia de Havilland, but Ida Lupino also was suspended a lot. However, what she did during her time at suspended was to visit sets, to visit editing rooms, and realized she wanted to become a director. And that's how it all began. She was married to a producer-writer named Collier Young, and they started their own film company called the Filmmakers. And they made, believe it or not, 12 low-budget movies. And she directed or co-directed 6 of them, and she wrote or co-wrote 5 of them. Now, the most interesting aspect of this for me, or one of the most, was that Howard Hughes signed the Filmmakers. This group signed them for 3 movies for RKO, where they had total control, that they had final cut. They could do what they wanted to do, because he was anxious to get these kind of low-budget movies made at RKO. So I don't want to keep talking. I want to come back to Ida Lupino, but let me throw it to one of you guys for someone else, and then I'll finish, because I don't want to dominate.
Oh, I was just going to jump in and say that Ida Lupino was the only woman who ever directed an episode of the original Twilight Zone.
That's correct.
And in 1950, when Joe Mankiewicz had to defend himself from a recall election at the Writers Guild over the blacklist, every director in Hollywood arrived at the Beverly Hills Hotel, October 22nd, 1950. The only female director in the room with 500 directors was Ida Lupino.
Yeah.
So I got a chance. Now I'm going to move over to the producer's side because I got a chance in the early 90s at Showtime. We produced a series of movies called Rebel Highway. They were remakes of all the Samuel Z. Arkoff and James Nicholson drive-in movies, films like Road Racers and Motorcycle Gang, and it was co-produced by Deborah Hill. And Deborah Hill had made her bones working with John Carpenter in a little film in 1978, which Arthur knows well, called Halloween. And Deborah was a very, very strong force as the producer side of John Carpenter. And I always thought that, and Deborah loved movies, and that's one of the key factors in being an effective producer, that you actually love what you do. And I wanted to toast her today.
Well, Deborah Hill was, in fact, one of the producers of the original Halloween. And my partner and I did have the rights to that film in New England. We just caught it exactly right. It was a huge hit. And we were able to do something a little different in New England with it, but we were like the last in the country to play it. In those days, the movies, independent movies especially, would play different sections of the country and then go to the next section. It wasn't, in other words, it wasn't a wide release. So by the time we got it, the idea I came up with was to play it in the best theaters in New England, rather than drive-ins and downtown theaters and where it was playing. And we killed them with this movie. So Deborah Hill was in my mind a long time, though the person who had the idea for the movie really was Erwin Yablans. Julian, you aware of that?
I did. I was aware of it.
He had the idea.
And I was aware of Erwin, which in itself was like watching Halloween.
Was he related? Was he related?
His brother.
Frank's brother. God.
Frank's brother.
Well, Halloween changed the whole course of horror movies. There had always been horror movies, but Halloween was a huge domestic hit. And I think that horror movies took on a new level.
Well, what happened, Steve, was that because I was in the front line of it, having being the distributor in New England of the movie, that weekend, I got calls from 4 of the 7 studio heads who I knew, of course, who asked me, are those numbers real that we're looking at? So I remember coming into the office on Monday morning and telling our staff of people, it was so great. It was like a Super Bowl hit. It was a great, great feeling. I said, I bring good news and bad news. The good news is the numbers we're looking at. The bad news is the major studios are into this thing, and they are now into it, and they've been making fortunes on it. It seems to me there's been a horror release 30 or 40 times a year. They know if they make it for X amount of money, $10, $12 million, it's going to return. They'll open big on Friday. The teenagers will come, and it's a golden genre. I want to get back here to women directors and producers. Being a former theater owner, my bent has always been, like anybody who's ever owned a movie theater, towards commercial movies, movies that hit at the box office. I could talk about Lena Wertmuller. We've distributed her films, but I won't. I will talk about 2 particular women who had the great knack for making hits. One is Nancy Myers, and one is Nora
Ephron.
Nora Ephron. How could I forget that even momentarily? They had the commercial bones right down pat. They made great commercial movies. Again, if you own a movie theater, the movie's great, it stinks. On Monday morning, you look at the numbers and you have to react at that point. Do we hold it over? Do we throw it out? Whatever the movie may be. But those movies were commercial, and some of them were, take a movie like Intern, which was Nancy Myers. You could watch that movie 1,000 times with Bob De Niro.
Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway. It plays forever. It's one of those great commercial movies. Will never win an Academy Award, but you just fall in love with it. And Nora Ephron, of course, Sleepless in Seattle, and others. Just great touch of commercial viable films that worked at the box office and worked overseas as well.
And to point out that they also not only directed them, but wrote them many times.
Yes. Yeah. Nora Ephron did. She co-wrote with Sleepless in Seattle with David Ward. But wonderful, just terrific movies. I wish, Steve always talks about, he wishes there were more comedies. We all do. But I just wish there were more movies like these women made that were so great at the box office, and they were just entertainment.
Yes.
How about that word, entertainment?
We should mention a specific movie, When Harry Met Sally, which was just an extraordinary success.
Yes, directed by Rob Reiner, but written
by Nora
Ephron.
That's right. Very quotable, very quotable. You naturally assume that women like to do very kind of emotional, romantic dramas, or just dramas in general. I'd like to mention Catherine Bigelow. Now, Catherine Bigelow doesn't do gentle romantic dramas. She directs kick-ass movies. She won the Best Director Award, The Hurt Locker. She actually beat her, I think it was her husband at that time. She was married to James Cameron, who had Titanic and also the Oscar race. But her movie, The Hurt Locker, which I've researched quite a bit, is a terrific movie. And also Zero Dark 30, about the hunt for Osama bin Laden, was just terrific as well. And she's very good action director.
And I believe she was the first woman ever to win the Director Academy Award.
Yes, for The Hurt Locker. Yes.
That's right.
Very true.
Zero Dark 30 had me on the edge of my seat from the moment it started. Let's say this really at the outset of what we're talking about. In so many areas of life, it's taken women much too long to get into the everyday work of whatever it is. Voting, my God Almighty, women have not been the favorite of a lot of stuff in the world, even in America. But it took time. But every time they break through, bang, it works. How many years did it take women to get to direct movies? Ida Lupino, you're talking about, was really in the 40s, Julian, wasn't it?
The very first woman to direct the film that kept directing was Dorothy Arzner, Arzner. She directed movies from 1927 she started in the silent movies, and then she directed films, and she ended up Katharine Hepburn in Christopher Strong, Rosalind Russell in Craig's Wife, Lucy in Girl Dance. These are their first movies that she put them in. But
she was only one person of how many?
Of so many, but very few, it turns out. So many wanted to do it, but so few did. She ended up at the end of her life teaching at UCLA, and her star student getting his master's was a guy named Francis Coppola. And he was going through, as he said, a very bad time. It was very morose. And she went by and saw him and sat him down and said, "Look, I know this business. You're going to be a big success. Don't give up. You really have the talent." And he said, because of her, he kept going. So she really, we all talk about how important a teacher can be in our lives. And obviously she was for Coppola, tremendously so. Over the years, she's been forgotten, sadly, but she started out as an editor. She edited 52 movies before she became a director. And she ended up directing the very first talkie movie ever done by Paramount with Clara Bow, called Wild Party with Frederick March. So she's really had a terrific background. And her films and all her papers and files are at UCLA, presented and paid for by an actress named Jodie Foster. So it's quite interesting how these things come about. And she's incredible, Arsna. She just is a very famous in certain circles, but the public, they don't know her at all.
They don't know about her. Julian, Clara Bow, who was called the It Girl, famous for the It Girl. Nobody of this generation knows who she is. But if you look at some of her films, you'll know why she was called the It Girl. She had it. She was great. Clara Bow was big,
It's true. It's very true. When we all can talk about how some very famous editors become filmmakers. I mean, Robert Wise, for example, was a top editor. Hal Ashby was a top editor. A lot of these fellows become famous in that editing room, and that's what
Thelma Schoonmaker never became a filmmaker, but she was what an editor for all of them.
Verna Fields.
Verna Field is a lot of them. And how about it took time? It took a lot of time. But I know at least certainly my Julian and myself. I don't know, Steve, if you ever met Sherry Lansing, but along came Sherry Lansing in about 1980. This was after she started as a reader. She actually started as an actress. I had seen a newly cut print on Hollywood Boulevard of Funny Girl one night, and I actually had an appointment with Sherry the next day, and she's in Funny Girl. She has that one line, "Nikki, come on, when are you leaving already?" and all this stuff. But she sticks her face in there. She's a very beautiful woman. But Sherry had taste, and she is retired now. But she went from being the head of production at 20th Century Fox to producing movies. And she produced some terrific movies like Fatal Attraction, like Indecent Proposal. I got a story about that for everybody. And then she became the head of the studio at Paramount, and she had terrific success, was the person on top of getting involved with a movie called Titanic. So Sherry Lansing was extremely successful, terrific person. She knew her business. Boy, she was great. But the story I want to tell about her is this. I was involved at the time with Robert Redford on a movie we were doing called A Quiz Show. And he was making Indecent Proposal at the time with Demi Moore. Sherry Lansing produced it. So while they were shooting a scene, I was sitting on the set, and Sherry Lansing, who produced the movie, came in to the studio where they were shooting the scene, and she, just like a ballerina, just kind of like danced around the edges of everything, never got fully into it. She just had class. She had taste. She looked things over. She made little notes, and then, and she was in, and then she went out. But it kind of, you hear so many times about people who are loud and noisy and producers who are bullies and all. She was just great. But I have great admiration for her. And Billy Friedkin got lucky when he found her and married her. And Billy, may rest in peace.
She also had a reputation for returning every phone call.
And she did.
And this isn't a business, everybody, hasn't had direct touch with Hollywood, where people just don't return phone calls. It's a disease. And Sherry did not contract that disease. I talked to her twice on the phone because I had Combat in play at the studio at one point. That was the movie based on the TV series. And she was very nice. Couldn't have been nicer.
Sherry and I went back a lot of years, like Arthur did with her. And I went to visit her in New York. I think it was the Hotel Carlyle. And I wanted her to do, I owned the remake rights to Lily, the movie Lily, from Carnival, which had been made. The movie Lily had been made into a Broadway play, Carnival. The big song from Lily was "A Song of Love is a Sad Song. Hi, Lily, hi, Lily, hi, lo." And Carnival was "Love Makes the World Go Round," another big song. And I started to say, I don't know if you've ever heard of a play, Sherry, called Carnival. And she jumped up out of her chair and yelled, "It was the very first musical I ever saw. I fell in love with Jerry Orbach. I want to do it. Whatever you got, I want to do it." That was the best deal I ever made. And because however, the film never got made. But I'll give her this. They renewed it for 5 times before they dropped it.
Julian, those 2 songs could easily blend into one song. They're in the same meter. They're in the same rhythm ball game.
And it's interesting, Arthur, that both became the big song from each of the movie and the play. So,
yes.
Yeah. I do want to say one quick thing about Dorothy Arzno before we leave her. When Clara Bow was doing that first talkie, she was having a lot of trouble with the sound equipment. A lot of the actors had to carry it. And it was Dorothy Arzno who came up with the following, the boom mic. How she did it was she got a fishing rod, connected the mic to the fishing rod. Someone held it in front of Clara Bow, and that's how she talked. So,
guys, I have to tell you a story. It has nothing to do with women in film, but I'll tell it about a microphone. So it's in the 1960s, and I'm a traveling salesman for United Artists. My branch manager, I was going to visit a woman who owned theaters in Concord, New Hampshire. She was a very heavy-set woman. And he said, "Look, this woman you're going to see, she's a litigant. And we understand that she's looking to file a lawsuit. So be careful of what you say." So anyway, I go up to visit this woman. She takes me upstairs to her office. And we start talking. And she says, "Could you move a little closer to the lamp?" Maybe to the flower pot, over to the flower pot. Yeah, microphones all over the place. Yes, and that's women theater owners. That's a whole different thing.
Did you pick up immediately on the
Immediately, yes. Yeah. When I heard the squeaking sound out of the plant, something was happening in that office.
Some actresses suddenly decide that they have to direct. And I have to mention a film of 1983 that utterly charmed me, directed by Barbra Streisand, called Yentl. And I thought that Yentl was quite a film that year. It was very well made. I think Barbra distinguished herself, yet she really never cottoned to directing. I don't think it was something she really was.
Didn't she also direct Prince of Tides?
She did.
She did.
So she actually did cotton to directing because I got to know her very well.
Oh, okay.
And, but did have the problem based in a male-dominated, even with her power. But her power was as an actress and a singer, not as a director. And
gotta say that we looked at a concert of hers streaming last week called Barbara Back to Brooklyn Night in 2012. Full orchestra, full everything. Barbara at her absolute best. And so when you talk about her as a performer, and I forget the actress thing, but as someone who's going to sing in concert, go out the stage and do it, there are good, there are great, there are mediocre, and then there's people like Barbra Streisand. To say, well, she's generational talent, she's an all-time talent. She's ridiculous. She was so great. And if anybody can see it, it's streaming. It's Barbra Streisand back in concert in Brooklyn. Wow. She does a tribute to Marvin Hamlisch, who was very close to her, of course, and had passed away several months before this concert. But boy, was she great. Julian, how great was Barbra Streisand? Whoa.
Just the best. Here's this shows you how crazy Hollywood can be. Barbara wanted to play the role of that Kathy Bates did on stage of Frankie and Johnny at the Claire de Lune. And she wanted that role. And she went after it. And they ended up, I don't know if you know the movie or what it's about, but it's supposed to be about a very plain looking waitress. And they choose, at her height, Michelle Pfeiffer. And that, I give you, is Hollywood. So
there's no business like show business. She would have
been perfect to play that role, and she wanted it. So, these are the stories that the public.
Did you see recently that they're asking her to come back and play in Meet the Fockers? They're doing a sequel. And she says she's totally pissed off because she found out that in the first movie, which was a big success, she got paid half the amount of money as the guys. Even Barbara Streisand. Unbelievable.
It is. It really is. But Steve gave us a good introduction about actresses becoming directors with Barbara, but I want to talk about Lee Grant, because Lee Grant is an extraordinary human being who, by the way, in October will turn 100 years old. And when she was at the height of her career, at 24 years old, she was blacklisted. And not only was she blacklisted at the height of her career, from 24 to 36 years old, 12 years. You'd figure, well, that's the end of her, but not Lee Grant, who's got more grit, true grit, than John Wayne ever even knew about. Anyhow, she came and ended up winning the Primetime Emmy for Peyton Place. She wins the Academy Award for Shampoo, and she decides that she wants to direct. And direct she does. She starts out with a guy we all know of, Saul Zaentz, who would big record guy who produced One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and he gives her the movie Tell Me a Riddle. Tell Me a Riddle with Melvin Douglas, Peter Coyote, Brooke Adams, lovely movie, and that's her first feature. She goes on to do, 20 or 30, maybe more documentaries. She then directs Marlo Thomas in a movie called Nobody's Child. Marlo wins the Primetime Emmy for that, and Lee wins the Directors Guild for that. It's the Maria Balta story about a woman who was mentally challenged and what she was able to do with her life, a true story. So Lee also ends up doing 43 intimate portraits of huge famous movie stars that she produces, directs with her husband. So Lee is another example of an actress that wanted, like Ida Lupino and Barbara, and to also direct, and direct she did.
Hall of Famer. How about we go back to a movie that Nora Ephron made called Julia Childs. What a great movie that was. Stanley Tucci, Meryl Streep, who I believe won the Oscar for that. Steve, is that right?
I think I will have to look it up, but I will look it up.
If our listeners have not seen this movie, whether you like cooking or not, see this movie. Julia Childs, my ex-partner, his mom produced Julia Childs cooking shows on PBS for years and years. Ruth Lockwood, quite a lady. And there's a woman in television, but Ruthie was just outstanding person. But did you all see the Julia Childs movie? Julie and I
sure did.
I have to believe you did.
I thought it was terrific. And I'm trying to remember if I put it at the Coronet or was I gone by then?
What a hit for the East Side. Oh, my God. The East Side of New York.
Big hit.
How great was Stanley Tucci in that movie? How great is Stanley Tucci in anything he ever does?
It's true. And speaking of cooking, boy, does he get involved with good food.
Can you imagine that? Really, yeah.
You know, we had a restaurant in Westchester for years, as Stanley did. So it's, I guess he took that movie to heart.
But can you imagine being married to Julia Childs? What's for dinner tonight, dear? And every night's a surprise, a great surprise.
I think if any of us would have been, we would be rolling around. We wouldn't walk. We would roll.
You guys ever see Something's Gotta Give?
Yeah, I love that movie.
And that's Nancy Myers.
That's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
Yes.
Okay, I got the answer for you, Arthur. Meryl was nominated for Best Actress, but she did not win that year.
Always nominated.
So, we were talking about Michelle Pfeiffer being cast in a rather unglamorous role. But I always remember Charlize Theron playing probably the most unglamorous role ever in a movie called Monster, which where she plays a killer. And the director of that movie was a lady named Patty Jenkins. And Patty Jenkins has come on to be a major filmmaker. She when they decide to make Wonder Woman into a feature with Gal Gadot in the title role. Patty Jenkins directed that Wonder Woman film, which I thought was terrific. If ever there was a great Wonder Woman movie to be made, it was that one.
Of course, the hottest woman director today has got to be Greta Gerwig.
Greta
Who did a
Gerwig.
little thing called Barbie that caught lightning in a bottle. Became one of those freak happenings that happens once every so often in the business. You couldn't get away from Barbie last year. Impossible.
It was akin to giving the movie business a big B12 shot, I'll tell you.
Yes.
Well,
And before that, she did Lady Bird. Is that right?
I believe you're right.
Yes. Well, Barbie and Oppenheimer were the two films that gave the business a little shot in the arm, even though Oppenheimer did not have to do with a woman director.
Those movies indicated also that people like original material. They don't need 19 versions of the same movie. So I am hoping that continues, although it's certainly not continuing this summer.
Well, people like ourselves, and there's still millions of people like us around, like stories and characters. And we are missing that kind of thing, as we've said before. And these are a lot of the movies we're talking about now. Now, you talk about a movie that caught lightning in a bottle, was Fatal Attraction. And that was, of course, Sherry Lansing. She made that with Stanley Jaffe, produced it. But what a film that was. I mean, again, that you couldn't get away from the movie when it was out, probably for a couple of months.
And that was the movie that they tested the original ending, and everybody hated it. It was an example of changing the ending, giving it a more positive ending. Because we shouldn't mention spoilers, because there's probably people listening who.
Nah, it's okay by this time.
So in the original movie, the original ending, Glenn Close gets away with it. And that was not going to satisfy your general audience. So they gave it a more just ending, and people love the ending.
Brought in a scissors. Well, I want to talk about a friend of mine named Elaine May, who has certainly been a woman who was one of the few, probably the only in the 70s, directing at all. And she started as a comedy team with Mike Nichols and Elaine May. At their height, she left the team to write and direct, but actually to write. And she optioned a short story called The Green Heart by a man named Jack Ritchie, and wrote an original screenplay called A New Leaf. When her agent submitted it to Paramount, she wanted to have control over the casting, and they told her the only way she could have control over the casting if she directed. He directed it. She had no intentions of being the director. As she said, she barely knew where the camera was supposed to go. But she took that deal and did become the director. So her first movie, A New Leaf, she wrote, directed, and co-starred with Walter Matthau. But the interesting part of that story for me was that she got a call from an actor named Cary Grant before the movie was made and said, "I'd like to play the lead. I think it's a wonderful script." He said, "I only have one problem. I don't want to go into the water, because at the end it necessitates." And Elaine said, "No, if you won't go into the water, I can't hire you." And I always said to her, "You turned down Cary Grant?" She said, I didn't know anything about doubles. I didn't know about these kind of things. He had to go into the water. So she said, here's the funny part of the story. The whole thing's funny for me. The funny part is that when she got to the scene where Walter Matthau has to go into the water, he said to her, "I'm not going into the water." And she said to him, "Listen, I turned down Cary Grant, so you got the movie. You're going in the water." And he went.
Cary Grant rejection. Wow.
That is a very, very funny movie.
It's a terrific film. 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not bad, huh? 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Julian, when she was directing The Heartbreak Kid, did you visit her at all on the set?
No, I didn't at that time. I didn't know Elaine then.
Oh, okay.
I've only known Elaine 50 years. And that
What's the biggest hit she had, Julian, as a director?
I would probably think Heartbreak Kid or New Leaf, one of the two.
Who directed La Cage aux Folles or Birdcage?
Mike Nichols.
Well.
She wrote it.
She wrote well.
Yeah, she wrote it. But that was her biggest hit as far as a writer is concerned. And Heaven Can Wait, because she wrote the Warren Beatty Heaven Can Wait movie as well. But her biggest hit she wouldn't take credit for, and that was Tootsie. She wrote the final script, and both Sidney Pollack and Dustin Hoffman publicly said, without Elaine May, there's no Tootsie.
Who got credit for writing?
Larry Gelbart and a guy named Don, I forgot his last name. Yeah. But
what a movie that was, huh?
Oh boy. Well, I know, first of all, she came up with the Bill Murray character. She said to Sidney Pollack and to Dustin, look, he's running around as a woman. You better make it difficult for him. And he's got to have a roommate who starts saying, what are you doing? I don't know if you remember this line where Bill Murray is taking notes, taking the messages for Dustin's woman character. And when Dustin comes in and he gives her all the messages, he said, here, you slut.
Right.
And then, of course, after Dustin drops the hammer on the show and reveals himself, he cuts back to Bill Murray saying, that is one wacky hospital.
And also Elaine came up with Some Enchanted Evening, the guy outside the window.
Oh my God.
I laughed and I couldn't stop laughing.
By the way, just for historical sake, the co-writer was Don McGuire.
Don, yeah. Thank you.
How about how Dustin Hoffman delivered the thing with Sidney Pollack saying, what's a tomato supposed to do? I'm a tomato. And you couldn't even be a tomato, with the line that he said, we're sitting in a Russian tea room, and he says, Michael, I told you to get help.
So back in the 1980s, one of the key film writers and directors was John Hughes. Did all those wonderful teen movies. But there was a female John Hughes, in a way, that also did some terrific, iconic teen movies, and that was Amy Heckerling. And Amy Heckerling directed a movie called Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which we all remember as one of Sean Penn's early films. And Jennifer Jason Leigh, Phoebe Cates. And then, of course, she goes on to direct Clueless, which is another iconic teen movie, giving us lots of vernacular that we have today. So Amy was definitely a force in the 80s and continues to be out there. She gets directing occasionally.
A couple of friends of mine made a movie called Valley Girls with Nick Cage early on. And it was directed by Penelope something.
Spheris.
Yes,
Spheris.
And they caught a hit. Valley Girls. Filmed at the Sherman Oaks shopping center, Steve.
Yeah, known as the Galleria.
As the Galleria, yes.
That's where they shot Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Oh, I know Penelope Spheris. I worked with her on the promotion for a movie called Dudes. And Dudes featured, amongst others, Flea. So another producer I'd like to mention, who is a big force, also allied to a gentleman, James Cameron, is Gail Ann Hurd. And Gail Ann Hurd wrote with James Cameron the movie The Terminator, which we all know was a big vehicle for Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the early 80s. And Gail Ann goes on to produce another James Cameron movie called Aliens, which was the sequel to the Ridley Scott Alien. She does The Abyss with Cameron. She comes back with T2. She did Tremors, Armageddon, T3. So Gail Ann Hurd, specializing in genre, I would consider genre classics, was a big force. And then she gets involved in a TV series called The Walking Dead, which has been on TV literally forever.
And I'd like to go back to Nancy Meyers with Father of the Bride, which was a remake that worked big time. And if I saw nothing of that movie other than Marty Short, it would have been worth the price of admission. Marty Short
as Franz, the wedding planner.
And he did it again in this second movie. And I want to also mention a movie that Nora Ephron made that today would be huge. Would probably be a movie that would bring middle-aged people out of their house to go a movie called You've Got Mail. You know, it wasn't the greatest thing of what it was, but it was great. It was terrific. It was entertaining. It made you feel good. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. And that was Nora Ephron. Nora Ephron was a world-class, great filmmaker, great writer,
and
filmmaker.
Married to a wonderful writer named Nick Pileggi.
Yes.
Of course, we all know from the movies as well. We should mention Jodie Foster as a director, because she's directed some films. It's interesting that a lot of the actresses, as Steve started us off with that theme, have become directors, and it's interesting. A lot of times, I often wonder what kind of resistance they get from old timers who are the sound men or the cameramen, and when they talk to you off the record, they've had the troubles with them. But eventually, if they're prepared, they get respected the way they should be.
Generally, on a female-directed movie, I bet the craft service is a touch better.
You guys ever see a movie called Holiday?
Holiday.
Harry
Nancy
Grant?
Myers?
Is that with Queen Latifah?
No.
No, I thought you meant The Holiday. Isn't that with Katharine Hepburn?
No, that was years earlier.
Yeah.
This is a love story. I believe it was Hugh Grant. Made in England. It was a hit that not too many people have heard of, but it hit. What Women Want, Nancy Myers. There's a lot of Something's Gotta Give. Jack Nicholson, yes. Complicated is another movie that was with you just interviewed him recently, Julian. Alex Baldwin, who was never better than in that movie.
I want to mention another actress who took the directing chair and did a very good job. Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie takes on the best-selling book Unbroken, which was a biographical film about an Army Air Force pilot named Louis Zamperini, who crash landed in the Pacific in his B-24 and spent 47 days on a life raft, floated all the way to Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands, and then was captured and brought to a Japanese prison and brutalized. But Angelina directed that, and I thought she did a really good job. It was a good movie.
She did another movie. Was it with Clint Eastwood that she directed? She did another film that was really good as a director, and I'm annoyed at myself because I can't remember the title. But Steve, I know you'll go to the tote board and you'll find a way that we can find out what that other movie was that was I thought was terrific that she did.
Should we talk about Julia Phillips for a while?
Yeah, she had her time. She and her
Sting.
Michael.
Yeah. Wow. You know, it's funny thing. I saw this Sting recently. It hasn't lost anything from 50 years ago. This picture is as great as it was then. Great movies have a way of doing that, of being able to last. But the Sting really does. It just works. When you say, when have you seen something like that recently? You haven't.
Oh, that's a terrific movie. And for those who are interested in trivia, James Earl Jones's father is in that movie as Robert Earl Jones at the beginning of the movie. He dies, but that's his dad.
He was the guy who was really in cahoots with Redford.
That's right.
Yeah, I can see that. I understand. Okay.
Even though nobody had the voice that Jimmy Jones had, nobody had that voice.
And that was his father.
Yeah.
So he would have been an older guy, I guess, at that time, 1973. And James Earl Jones came on the scene big time, late 60s, maybe?
Yeah, with
White Hope.
White Hope. Yeah, yeah.
This is CNN.
That was Steve. That was Steve, not James.
Right. Julian, who is the most, how shall I say, celebrated woman director in theater?
Well, at one time, Susan Stroman, because of The Producers, it won the most Tony Awards, and she not only directed it, she choreographed it. So she would be certainly one that I would say would be.
She choreographed Springtime for Hitler, the dance number.
Yep. Yeah. She and also she's a great choreographer and a fine director as well. And I worked with her on Bullets Over Broadway. So I loved working with her. She's a fine director and a fine human being, which doesn't necessarily go hand in hand.
Yeah. Who else, though, on Broadway? Successful women directors.
Well, I'm trying to think.
Of course, directing on Broadway is not the same as a movie, huh?
No, there's quite a difference, and it's quite interesting. There's only a few men who could make it in both. There was Orson Welles and Mike Nichols, but very few could do both.
Julian, I can't find a Clint Eastwood starring movie.
Forget Clint Eastwood, Steve. How about she didn't direct that many movies. So what else did she direct?
Well, she did star for Clint Eastwood in a movie called Changeling. Right. But in terms of her art, she does a lot of films overseas with very unusual casts in Bosnia, things like that.
I see.
You just have to look up on IMDb.
Well, I think probably what happens to my mind these days is I guess Changeling somehow got in there with Clint Eastwood, except that he probably directed it, not she.
Well, I know that we're talking about women today, but I think we should all light a candle to Clint Eastwood, still directing at 96. I mean, he's
bad back and all.
He is a force. It just goes to show you that if you've got a mission, it keeps you alive.
Well, it certainly helps, that's for sure. I think Mel Brooks at 99 is directing still. So,
well, yeah. I bumped into him in a deli last year, and I told him that my writing partner and I were so inspired by him. And you know what his answer was? Where's my check? Now, I want to, as you guys know, I'm the James Bond guy. So I got to mention Barbara Broccoli. Barbara Broccoli, the daughter of Albert R. Broccoli, also known as Cubby Broccoli, took the mantle and has produced probably a dozen James Bond movies until recently, where Amazon essentially bought her and her stepbrother Michael Wilson out, and they now control the creativity of James Bond. But Barbara, very sharp producer, very hands-on producer, and a very eclectic producer. She's gone off and done some other movies. I think she did recently a Gloria Graham biopic that got a lot of attention. At least
pretty good movie.
Yeah, and she is a very nice woman.
Steve, what's your theory about why they sold? I mean, money, of course, was gigantic, but they don't need the money. So, what do you think the reason was?
I think the James Bond movies for her and her stepbrother have become a colossal pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. They are scrutinized under a microscope. There's so much pressure. They've got to be big, massive hits because they cost a bloody fortune. I think after a while, and like I mentioned, she's gone to produce other things. So being a producer and loving movies, I think she wants to do other things. Also, her stepbrother, Michael Wilson, is not in great health. So I think they both realized it was time to give up the mantle.
Well, they certainly went out on top. That's for sure.
And by the way, right, I read your New Yorker article about what Bond will look like under Amazon. It was very, very, very funny.
I thought you'd get a kick out of it, but I don't want to say it's my New Yorker article.
The one you shared,
the New Yorker.
Another director we should mention is Sofia Coppola, and she obviously comes from good genes, daughter of Francis Ford Coppola, and cousin of Nicolas Cage, of course. Just a good director and does interesting things. I think her first movie was The Virgin Suicides, got a lot of indie attention. Then she does that movie with Bill Murray in Japan. I'm forgetting the name of it. Julian, help me out here.
No, I can't, but I liked it a lot. I'll tell
Lost
you
in
that.
translation.
Lost in Translation. Thank you, Mike Faber. So
And Sophia is also the related to the lady from Rocky and The Godfather,
Talia Shire
Talia Shire. What a mashpucha that is, my lord!
and Nick Cage.
Yes,
Nicholas
now,
Cage.
now, by the way,
That family.
when the story I heard from Godfather Part 3 was that Winona Ryder, I'd heard originally that she broke her ankle and she couldn't play the daughter of Al Pacino. But recently, Andre Eastman told me that was a lot of BS. That actually Winona Ryder had walked away from the role and decided not to do it at the very last minute, which puts the production in terrible jeopardy. And they had to recast, and that's why Francis brought in his daughter to play the role. I have great respect for Sophia, but she was miscast, and I think that the movie just went down the drain from there. But that's what happens in our crazy business.
was Joe Montana in Godfather 3, or am I thinking of Andy Garcia?
Yes,
Andy Garcia.
Andy Garcia.
No, they're both in Godfather Part 3.
Oh yeah,
Joe plays Joey Zaza.
big Chicago Cub fan, huh? Like you.
Big Chicago Cub fan. Absolutely. Go Cubbies.
I'd like to mention a movie that Elaine wrote and directed called Mikey and Nicky. Peter Falk, John Cassavetes, and Ned Beatty. When it first came out, it had the unfortunate tagline first of all, it was a Christmas release, which was really not the greatest idea for a gangster movie. And secondly, the tagline was, "Don't expect to like them." This is not a great way to bring people into the theater. Don't expect to like them. But anyhow, it did not do well. And Elaine was able to get the movie back from Paramount. She owns it. And we've distributed it all over the world. And Stanley Kaufman, one of the great critics, called it one of the 10 best films of the 1970s, of the entire decade, not just of the year. Gene Shalit of NBC called it one of the 10 best films of the year. It's played all over the world and is considered by many people a masterpiece. And I'm talking about big, important people who care about movies. So that's Mikey and Nicky.
I watched it for the first time when you presented it on TCM.
Yes.
And I thought it was marvelously intensive. And, having John Cassavetes and Peter Falk together, they just burst the screen in fire. I liked it.
Peter Falk in anything. There is a movie here, guys, that Nancy Meyers did that I saw in a screening room in Boston with a whole bunch of movie people. And the movie was Private Benjamin. And when it ended, somebody said, "This picture will never do business. Who's going to believe a Jewish girl in the army?" That was a rocket scientist. Another one of those
Oh, boy.
comments from the screening room. Oh, do we
That
know
is
those
one
comments?
one of the funniest movies of all time. When she's in the barracks and she says, "Where are the condos?"
Well, that's Nancy Meyers again. So there it is. It's the gift.
That is the quintessential fish out of water movie, I'll tell you.
And it also is probably one of Goldie's best performances in any movie. She was sensational in that film. She was adorable.
There was a movie to go along with that comment. Unbelievable. We had a movie called The Charge of the Light Brigade with David Hemmings, 1970 or something like that. And one of the comments afterwards was one of the geniuses, a theater owner, came and said, "This movie will never do business. There's no tits." Charge of the Light Brigade. Okay, right. You have to be there to believe this stuff,
There were some female horses, though, in that charge, though.
I'll bet, yes.
Well, I will say this. As far as lines are concerned, Gene Shalit, reviewing a big turkey called The Adventurers, said, "The Adventurers is a mammoth movie, and that's why the mammoths are extinct."
And of course, I worked on the BMX bicycle racing near classic of 1986 called Rad. And the reviews all said, "Rad, is bad. Okay, now we've come to a new segment on Tales from Hollywoodland. Arthur, Mike, and Julian and I are going to talk about the last movie we saw, whether it's on TV or in the movies. And I'm going to immediately jump in and say I was on TCM the other night and I caught a movie called The Young Stranger. I had never heard of it. Kind of a teen movie starring an original, his debut, James MacArthur. John Frankenheimer's first feature film directing credit. And it takes place it's made in 57, so it's shot in Westwood Village and around Beverly Hills. So I got to see a little bit of the old neighborhood. And I really enjoyed the role. And this got a great review in Leonard Maltin's book. They said it was absolutely excellent. It's about a family that loses communication with their own son as he becomes a bit of a tough. What about you, Julian? What was the last movie you saw?
I wanted to watch Dr. Strangelove because I was one of the few people that didn't worship at its film cans, I guess. But I liked a lot of it, and I still like a lot of it. But I have to say, Peter Sellers in 3 roles is so brilliant in this movie. And it's interesting to know that Kubrick co-wrote the movie. He didn't just direct it, he co-wrote it.
With
and there are scenes that where Peter Sellers, as the president, is talking to the head of Russia named Dmitry. The conversations about who's more upset about being bombed, that we've sent the bombers or that they're going to be bombed, is some of the funniest things I've seen in a long time.
You know, he was going to play the 4th role too. He was going to play the Slim Pickens bomber captain role.
Oh, Slim Pickens.
Yeah, so they had decided it was too much. What about you, Arthur? What was the last movie you saw?
I saw a little gem before he made Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia and Bridge into the River Kwai. David Lean made a little gem called Brief Encounter. And that's probably the last movie I saw from beginning to end. I saw it on television, streaming, or whatever it is. Did you guys see it? Ever see Brief Encounter?
Yes, of course.
Ooh.
Oh my God. Trevor Howard and Celia Johnson, I believe. What
a great movie. Oh my goodness. You know, so if somebody, told me after the movie, they said, that was done by David Lean. I said, wow, David Lean making that little a movie, but boy, that's a powerhouse film.
He cut his bones on small movies, Arthur.
Yes.
We got to know him because of Kwai and Lawrence of Arabia, etc. But he made a movie called The Rocking Horse Winner, with a little movie about a little boy who gets on a rocking horse and gets all kinds of power. But Lean is a very interesting director. His version of Great Expectations is one of the best movies you'll ever see adapted from a Charles Dickens book.
Has Marin seen Brief Encounter?
Oh my God! Yes, of course.
Barbara's, of course, she loved it.
She's from Great Britain. She has to.
Let's let Mike jump in and tell us the last movie that Mike saw.
Last movie I saw, we went to the movies. It was the first time we went to the theater since October. We actually went to go see the new Wes Anderson movie, The Phoenician Scheme.
Oh.
And it was quite well. Well, it's a typical Wes Anderson movie that, half the time you're going, what is this I'm watching? And the other times you're going, oh, wait, there's Tom Hanks. Oh, there's Michael Cera. Oh, there's, so many different cameos and such. And it's a fun movie, but it's, typical out there. And it's artsy, it's crazy, it's weird. But the casts he gets for his movies are just amazing. And
was the theater filled?
Yes, it was.
You saw it on a Saturday night?
I saw it on it was a Thursday night.
What was the admission?
We paid $11 to go see.
11?
Yeah.
You have popcorn?
Of course. We had popcorn and an iced tea that we split.
Yes.
So
and the theater was sold out on a Thursday night.
It was full. I don't know if it was sold out.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
it's very good. Now Anderson has a good following, definitely.
Yep.
So are we? I think it's time to turn the show over to you, Mike, I believe.
Oh, it's my time already. That's awesome. Cool. And, this was a fascinating topic you guys were talking about. And you guys were just scratching the surface. And, there's so many women in the industry right now, and they are, a growing segment of the industry too. And just not big studios, a lot of the independent film, a lot of TV and, music videos and such is, female directors or producers. It's pretty awesome what we have going on there. But as always, you've reached the end of this episode of the Tales from Hollywoodland podcast. Always remember, we couldn't do this here without you. We want to hear from you guys, so please write us anytime at talesfromhollywoodland@gmail.com. You can also find us wherever fine podcasts are found, and now you can even find us up on our YouTube channel. If you made it this far into the episode, why not subscribe and give us a thumbs up? We would really appreciate it. If you're into social media, please check us out over on Instagram and Facebook. Before we get out of here, let's check with the guys and see what's happening on their podcast. Julian, who are you talking to this week?
This week is Amy Schumer, a terrific stand-up comic, but also a woman who's made a lot of movies and recently made a giant hit called Kinda Pregnant, which was something like 50 million people streamed it all over the world.
Wow.
Amazing what's happened with that movie. But she also made Trainwreck, and she had a show for years called Inside Amy Schumer. But she's very serious on the show and talks a lot about what it is to be a stand-up, a woman stand-up, and also a director. Speaking of directing, she's done that too.
That is awesome. It was a great interview, and you got everyone at home. Please give it a listen. Definitely check it out. Steve, what's going over on Saturday night at the movies?
We're continuing our discussion with, I brought an old vintage interview out of Mothballs with Richard Maybaum, who wrote 13 James Bond movies. We learn a lot about his early life as an accomplished Broadway playwright before he started writing adventure movies for Cubby Broccoli, which led him to the Bonds. It's just the first of many parts on Richard Maybaum.
Awesome. And Arthur, we got a big anniversary special coming up next week on our show.
Our 100th anniversary, our 100th show, unbelievable. Tales from Hollywoodland. 100 shows. We're going to do a free-for-all on what we believe are the greatest movies and movie stars of all time.
Ooh.
And it's based on no lists, just based on what we think. And hopefully you listeners and viewers will join us and listen to this. It'll be fun.
Awesome. That is going to be a lot of fun. And can you believe it? Congratulations, guys. Coming up on 100 episodes. Most podcasts don't make it even past their 5th. So that's pretty great. We put up with each other for this long. This is cool. This is awesome.
Maybe somebody will write in and tell us what they don't have to write 100. They can just write 1 or 2. Let's see what they have to say too.
Nice. On behalf of Steve, Arthur, and Julian, thanks again for listening. This is your producer and announcer, Mike Faber, and we will see you here next time on Tales from Hollywoodland. Your Hollywood adventure starts right here.
Hey, Tony,
Yes, Joe?
we need to make a new promo.
For the Watchathon of Rassilon?
Yes, the podcast where we talk about every episode of Doctor Who in order.
Well, what do we need to say about it?
Actually, I think that pretty much covers it.
Great.
The Watchathon of Rassilon,
It's a Doctor Who podcast.
and a proud member of the ESO Network.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.